Hi there, smart drivers. Talking about situational awareness, one of the cornerstones of safe driving, being aware of what's around you and putting in place space so that you can respond accordingly to changing traffic patterns and the actions of individual road users. We're talking about situational awareness. Where are you? What kind of driving environment are you in? What kinds of road users are you sharing the roadway with? Are you shoulder checking? Are you checking your mirrors? And again, when you're on those multi-lane roadways and somebody's pulling out, you're coming through an intersection, there's a petrol station on the other side of the intersection, and somebody's pulling out from the petrol station, the gas station, are you just going to pull in beside them? No, you want to manage space so that they're not coming out and you're driving past them, because they could potentially overshoot that, oversteer that, and drive into your lane, and now you're into a sideswipe crash and into damage on your vehicle. For those of you new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver in the 1990s. I hauled freight between Ontario, Canada, and the United States. Drove buses for Greyhound on one of the regional bus lines in Australia while I was going to university there. 2006, I graduated from the University of Melbourne with my doctorate in legal history, which is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. Became a licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997, so I've been a driving instructor for a very long time. I teach anything from motorcycles all the way to tractor trailers and smarter defensive driving, which is what we're talking about today in terms of situational awareness. 2015, I started the online YouTube channel and the online business. It's been wildly more successful than could have ever imagined. Resources to have a look at. Both these videos are down in the description. Have a look at those. Mastering shoulder checks, the reason for shoulder checks, and any time that you change directions of the vehicle, right and left, shoulder check in the direction that you want to go, and as well communicating with other traffic, because as I do say, driving is a social event, right? And you need to get along with other people. You need to communicate effectively with other people. Driving tips: managing space, having spatial awareness around your vehicle. Look at those 5 city driving tips in heavy traffic, and that too will definitely help you out with situational awareness and keeping yourself safe. What is the perception of risk? This is the thing that is most important in terms of driving. And going back to that video that I showed you with the rear end crash, people are convinced that if they get rear-ended, that they are not at fault. And that is not true. That is not true, especially if the case goes to court. There are many legal precedents to show that there are cases where the lead driver has been assigned a portion of the responsibility for the rear end crash. So we need to dispel this myth that only the person at the back end is responsible for the rear end crash, and that there is nothing that you can do about it, because there is something that you can do about it. And it is the same thing with swimming and, barbecuing in the backyard. We look at these activities most of the time and we think that they are innocuous, that there's no harm, no foul in these activities, when the reality is that if you're not cleaning your barbecue and not maintaining your barbecue, it could catch on fire, and you could basically, set your house on fire and those types of things. Swimming, 4,000 people in the United States of America drown every year. 4,000 people in the United States of America. The perception is many would think that drowning and pools are more dangerous than driving, when the reality is that 45,000 people in the United States of America die every year in car crashes. So it is dangerous, and you need to think about what is your risk perception? What is something that can happen when you're doing something? The other piece about driving, we don't take it as seriously as it should be taken, is because cars, our vehicles, are our second most personal space next to our houses. We get in our vehicle, we feel completely safe. And of course, now with all the modern technology and less road noise and those types of things, we feel even more comfortable in our cars. And there was one driving instructor some years ago that said, if you actually wanted to make cars safer, and the best safety feature that you could put in a car is just a big spike on the steering wheel, would get drivers to pay attention to what's going on and actually drive with some due care and with due diligence when they're driving, and have care for other people and themselves on the roadway. Priorities when driving. When do you have to pay attention? Because your attention ebbs and flows when you're driving. You're not glued to the wheel, looking out the windshield 24/7 all the time. There are times that you got to pay attention, and there are times that you can just have calm awareness when you're moving forward. As with the woman in the thing, she didn't have calm awareness. She wasn't scanning up effectively. She wasn't taking note of what traffic was going on around her and those types of things. So moving through intersections, you need to be on high alert. You need to manage space in front of you, because if you have space, you have time to work, right? Space buys you time buys you options. Options prevent crashes. What is the traffic doing around you? What environment are you in? And what road are you on, and what vehicles and other traffic is around you? Do you simply need calm awareness, as I said before, or do you need to be on yellow alert as kind of, the Star Trek whole kind of genre and skills and abilities when you're driving? Smarter defensive driving. What is the problem that you're facing? Social driving. It's the way that everybody else drives after they get their license. They speed, they follow too close. They're not paying attention, they're distracted, they're on their phones, so on and so on and so forth. And we could probably spend all day talking about all the goofy things that other drivers do on the roadway. This is the problem that you're facing as a driver on the roadway, and you want to put into place the tools of the smarter defensive driving model to keep yourself safe. Space management, observation, speed management, and communication. If you can do those things effectively and put those tools in place and create the habits, you will be a safer, smarter driver. And as I said, it's not going to protect you today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but in 12 years, it may prevent you getting into a crash. Mapping intersections, tracking road users. As I stated, more than 40% of crashes happen at intersections. So it is important that as you're approaching the intersection, you're mapping the intersection. What kind of an intersection is it? Does it have slip lanes? Does it have left turning lanes? Does it have an advanced green? Where are the pedestrians at the intersection? If you're preparing to turn left at that intersection, are the pedestrians on the far side of the intersection? Are there cars in the right turning lane on the other side of the intersection if you're preparing to turn left? All that is going to factor in how you respond and move through the intersection. Mapping, tracking, and are you alert to any changes that could potentially happen at the intersection? Things that could cause traffic to do something unpredictable. For example, there's a wide load vehicle moving through the intersection. It's going to change traffic patterns. All this is something that you need to consider and respond to when you're moving through intersections and driving along roadways. Where am I sitting in traffic? And this was the question that Carrie asked, an excellent question about, what happens if you're sitting in traffic, there's no space, you can't move to the right or left because there's a concrete barrier on your left and there's traffic on your right, but you always stop back one vehicle length in traffic. That way you're sitting there, you're watching your center mirror, watching the traffic up behind you, and if you're like, oh wait a minute, that person's coming up way too fast, take your foot off the brake pedal and pump the brake pedal to flash the brake lights behind you. As well, you're kind of inching forward, and if you get up a half a vehicle length, oftentimes that's enough to get the vehicle behind you stopped to prevent them from rear-ending you. Okay, driving on highways, are you being passed? Are you passing other people on the highway? What are the road markings? Which way is the road going? Is it going to curve to the right? Is it going to curve to the left? Do you have railway crossings that you're going over as you're driving on the highway? Is there a passing lane ahead? For example, the person in front of you, you're on a 50-mile-an-hour highway. The person in front of you is insisting on doing 45 miles an hour and you want to pass them, but you see a sign, you're aware of the signs that says in two miles, there's a passing lane. Well, we just hang back, keep our speed, and we wait for the passing lane, and we do it safely as opposed to just going crazy and passing at any point on the highway. These are the types of things that will keep you safe and make you a safer, smarter driver because you had situational awareness, not just around your vehicle and the traffic, but also the traffic signs along the roadway that are giving you information and informing your decisions as you're driving. Different driving environments are going to require different levels of attention when you're driving. different kinds of driving environments, and you can move through these in a very quick succession in 5 or 10 minutes. You can move from a residential area into an industrial area, out onto an interstate, and into very heavy city traffic in a downtown core. All of this can happen within a 15-minute drive when you're moving along the roadways. Okay, so residential, parks and school, multi-lane city roadways, cities, schools. I have schools there twice. Unfortunately, I need to amend that. 2-lane city roadways, freeways and interstates, rural country roads, towns and villages. All these are different types of driving environments that you need to take note of and adjust your driving accordingly to keep yourself safe. Experiential, where to focus. Develop driving habits that are going to keep you safe, because if you can put the habits in place, you're going to respond accordingly to traffic even when you get tired, you're distracted, or something in the driving environment takes your attention away from the task of driving. Maintain a 3 to 4 second following distance at all times. Stop back 1 vehicle length from traffic in front. Shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. ABS, always be scanning and signaling. Have that awareness around your vehicle. Take in the traffic signs. Traffic signs are to driving what instructions are to an IKEA cabinet. Only after things go wrong do we start looking at the traffic signs, do we look at the IKEA instructions to be able to put the cabinet together or to be able to drive safely, okay? Read the traffic signs to be a safer, smarter driver and more predictable on the roadways. The problems with new drivers, this is what you're facing. The 4 Ds: drinking, driving, dating, and distractions. And an interesting note, here in the province of British Columbia, which is one of the few places that has a second driving test to exit the novice phase of the GDL, they're now talking about eliminating that, which is interesting because they put the GLP program here, the graduated licensing program, or the GDL, graduated driver's license, which all places have it, but only a couple of places have the second exit driving test. The real reason that they are eliminating it is because ICBC, the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia here, the test centers that do the licensing, simply don't have the staff to be able to do the number of tests that need to be done every year. So this is the real reason that they're eliminating it. And as well, it doesn't work because here on the novice phase in British Columbia, people don't do the exit test. They just keep driving on their ends. I met a person, he was well into his 40s. He was still driving on his ends. His novice license. He didn't go in for the driver's test, so now he's not going to have to because they're going to eliminate the second test here in the province of British Columbia. So these are the issues that you're facing: observation and communication. As I said, it's social driving. Driving is a relationship. You need to have these two components, these two tools of the smarter defensive driving in place to keep yourself safe when you're driving. Hey, develop driving habits that will protect you: observation and communication, and the right information. I don't know whether you can see this poll or not, but it's interesting. I ran it a few years ago. It was probably a little bit more than 4 years ago, because you can see here on the thing, I only had 45,000 subscribers on the channel. But most people believe, and I probably should run this poll again, that it's inexperience of new drivers. It's not inexperience. It's peer pressure. Peer pressure. They're pressured to drive the way everybody else does after they get their license because there's no oversight. They're just given a license and then they're set free, and there's no professional development after they get a license, right? They just go and look and see what everybody else is doing. And here's a perfect example of that. The putting the transmission into neutral, the driving and stopping on ice and snow video that I put up. One smart driver left a comment that they slid coming up to an intersection. So after that, they geared down in the transmission. And this is what informed their decision that gearing down was the best way to slow down on snow and ice, because after they slipped and slid at the intersection, it didn't happen anymore. So maybe they didn't hit any more ice, but they didn't slide anymore after that. So they determined on that one experience that this was the best way to drive on ice and snow, was to gear down on the transmission. The reality is that for most drivers, this is what happens. This is how they learn to drive. And this is what informs their driving. They don't go to any professional and get information about the best ways and the best practices to do things, or tips and techniques and strategies, as all the smart drivers here and watching on the replay. They simply have something happen to them while they're driving, And that informs the rest of their driving career. They never seek to change any of that or get any different information. So it's a little sad, a little unfortunate. But these are the people, this is the reason why you're shoulder checking, to stay away from these people on the roadways. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. An excellent example for you of a video of rear end crash, unfortunately, and it's interesting because you get the front view and you also get the view of the passengers in the vehicle, and the woman that is driving does not have any situational awareness. So situational awareness is going to protect you from being rear-ended when you're driving, because you have to be aware of what's behind you. On the same note, some people are too aware of what's going on behind them, and they're consumed to the point of distraction about the person that is behind them and the person that is tailgating you. I will say to you that yes, there are people that tailgate. Unfortunately, you know, there are some other techniques and strategies you can put in place to keep yourself safe when people are tailgating you, but we're going to try and give you those, but we're going to give you some strategies and skills for situational awareness as well. Situational awareness, we're talking about checking your mirrors, we're talking about shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. I talk about this, and you know, I can be the shoulder check guy, and I unfortunately had a driving instructor, and I think the driving instructor has been on my channel before, left a comment on the weekend about that he teaches people and he is convinced that he does not have to shoulder check. And for those of us who are implementing skills and strategies to keep ourselves safe, we're shoulder checking to avoid those people who don't shoulder check and do not have situational awareness. What saddened me about that comment was this person is teaching other people to drive and tells them that you don't have to shoulder check after you get your license. And in response to, well, why do I have to shoulder check for my license and it's redundant, he responds that when you're a perfect driver like me and have a perfect record, you too don't have to shoulder check. So it just, that whole thing disturbs me when people are teaching other people how to drive and they're not teaching them how to shoulder check, because shoulder checking is the key to situational awareness, because it forces you to move your head and to be observant and looking around and taking in the information about what's going on the roadway, because everything on the roadway is always changing. And because it's always changing, you need to ABS, always be scanning to keep yourself safe. It's basically a woman and she's driving on, you know, through the city and gets out on the highway. It's not an interstate, but it's a highway. And she's not looking. She's not looking at her mirrors. She's not shoulder checking. At one point, she drives down and there's a merge lane coming in from the right. She doesn't look out. She doesn't shoulder check. She doesn't look, has zero situational awareness. But she probably thinks that she's a good driver because she's completely focused on what she's doing. And she's not talking to her husband while she's driving. She's barely responding to him, not listening to him. Maybe they're just an old couple, an old married couple or something, but those types of things. But she's focused on what's going on in front of her. And she, in my opinion, would be that she is 90% of the drivers, 85% of the drivers on the roadway. Not paying attention, not checking your mirrors regularly, not shoulder checking. She doesn't have any situational awareness. She's not checking her mirrors and then pulls up to the intersection and gets rear-ended at the intersection. And the reason that she got rear-ended at the intersection is because she came to a stop and she didn't do defensive stopping, which was to check the traffic to the rear before coming to a stop at the intersection. Had she done that, she may have prevented getting rear-ended. So one of the comments on the video was that the dad, we're assuming it's the dad, didn't even ask anybody in the vehicle if they were okay. He just gets out of the car to go and determine whatever damage had happened to the vehicle. Now, the other piece that I would like to say, and I would like to praise her for, is her following distance is excellent. She has a 3 to 4 second following distance for that entire video. Not to mention she stops back one vehicle length from the vehicles in front of her. However, there's no situational awareness. When she did change lanes, the dad, we're assuming, the gentleman in the passenger seat was the one that, he was the one that shoulder checked. And when she did move back into the other lane, she just kind of looked in the mirror. She didn't shoulder check. She didn't look and see if there was anything in her blind area when she moved over. So it is so important that you need to have situational awareness. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. And the other thing about it is the yellow light. She comes up, she stops at the yellow light. She did a hard brake. It wasn't locking up the tires, engaging the ABS kind of hard, but she did, and she didn't check. She didn't do a defensive stop behind her. The myth of all of this, the myth within driving, is that it's the person in the back, it's their fault that I got hit. I have zero responsibility in what happens. I only have responsibility for what's going on out the front and to the two sides. I don't have responsibility for what's going on behind. And that is not what's going on here at all. You can avoid being in a rear end crash, and she could have prevented this by looking behind and going, wait a minute, that person behind me is not getting stopped. I need to tap the brake lights a couple of times to flash the brake lights to alert that person behind that we're going to come to a stop. Or she could have made sure that the left turning vehicle at the intersection wasn't going to move in front of her and then aborted and just gone through on the yellow light. So those are the ways that could have prevented that. As well, when she was driving through the intersection and the fuel station was on the other side there and that car pulled out, she was not ready in terms of the fact if that car moved right over into her lane. She just drove past it as if, everything was good. So what I'm saying to you in terms of situational awareness is you need to be checking your mirrors, you need to be shoulder checking, you need to be responding to what's going on in the driving environment. And when you come up to a yellow traffic light and you're going to come to a stop, you need to put in place defensive posturing. You need to do defensive stops, okay? You need to be checking that rear view mirror before you bring your vehicle to a stop. And if there's somebody behind you, you need to get on that brake and you need to be tapping it to flash the brake lights to alert the people behind you that you are in fact coming to a stop. Now, the other piece about it, you need to have that situational awareness so that person is coming up behind you. You don't get it stopped, okay? You may need to abort, okay, the stop. You may need to go through on the yellow light to keep yourself safe and not get rear-ended, right? But again, the intersection was complicated by there was a left-turning vehicle there at the intersection, and it's a momentary decision. Okay, do I come to a stop for the yellow light? Do I risk getting rear-ended by this person behind me that may or may not see my brake lights, or having the person making a left-hand turn in front of me? So it's not an easy situation. It's a difficult situation to deal with. Marion, I did a hard stop yesterday, but no one was behind me. The light changed as I was coming up to it and I had no time to stop, but it was harder stop than normal. Yeah, and the other defensive technique that you can put in place, not just for what Marion's doing, but if you do come up to an intersection and you get caught out, as we sometimes do, it happens every now and again, it's not very often. Hit the brakes hard, release the brakes, and then hit the brakes again. And then that way what happens is you flash the brake lights, right? So the people behind you can come to a stop as well. But again, you got to be paying attention to that vehicle behind you, because you're gonna, you got to get them stopped too, right? And this is often what happens mid-block, not just at intersections, but mid-block. Somebody will stop behind another vehicle that's turning, so you're the third vehicle in the row. You barely get stopped behind the second car, and it's the fourth car in the row that rear ends the car, because the first vehicle stopped to make a turn, the next vehicle stops, you stop hard, and then the next vehicle doesn't get stopped. So it's exactly what Marion just said. It is a tricky situation, right? And you got to make quick decisions, and it comes from a sort of a bit of experience as well about what you're going to do to be able to get your vehicle stopped safely. But again, it boils down to situational awareness, knowing what's going on around your vehicle, reading the traffic situation, and responding accordingly. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Thanks very much. All the best. Bye.